July came. A thin, cool rain fell as Victor trudged home. He shivered, feeling ill from a heavy chest congestion. Besides, an announcement he had heard today made him uneasy. Christina greeted her husband and asked worriedly, "You don't look well. Is something wrong?" Today the Russians posted a summons. All men from 18 to 45 must go to the stadium in Tallinn, he answered warily, not wishing to alarm her. "What for?" It said nothing more, so I went to the stadium and inquired at the entrance. I learned that they were recruiting men for the army. But the numerous guards at the entrance made me suspicious. Many men entered the stadium, but no one came out again. But didn't they give any deferments for illness or other reasons? Evidently not. My suspicions were confirmed when I talked to several people standing around the stadium. Obviously, it is a trap to rid Estonia of all men of fighting age. He paused. The thing that worries me is the threat that anyone who does not enlist they will catch and shoot as a deserter. She pushed away the disturbing thoughts that nagged her and announced, "I'll go to the stadium and find out if you can get a deferment. They won't do anything to me, I don't think," she added hesitantly. Hurriedly, Christina took the bus to the stadium. She entered it and asked a guard, "Could I speak to the person in charge?" He referred her to several officers, all of whom seemed too busy to be bothered. Finally, one of them took time to talk to her. "What is it you want?" he demanded gruffly. Summoning all her courage and swallowing her fear, she replied, "I've come in behalf of my husband. He's ill. Our doctor advised him to stay in bed." The man was surprisingly patient. "We can't act on deferments for illness here. Tomorrow, go to our main office in Tallinn and explain your case." Thanking him, Christina left. Outside of the stadium, a crowd had gathered. She stopped to watch. The men who had reported to the stadium that day, thousands of them, stood lined up. Under close guard, they marched to nearby barracks. They had no time to pack any belongings for the long trip to Siberia, and not even time to say goodbye to their families. Wives, mothers, and children, screaming and crying, tried to press close to the marching men. But the guards rudely pushed them aside. It was probably the last time these Estonians would see their families. Shocked and depressed, Christina started for home. Thoughts crowded into her mind. Obviously, it was no ordinary recruitment, but deportation in disguise. An attack from Germany seemed imminent, and now fewer Estonians could join in the fight against Russia. The government would ship the men to concentration camps in Siberia, that fearfully cold, desolate, hostile, and cheerless land. Few lived there by choice. Those taken to the concentration camps worked in the mines and in the forest, cutting lumber, until death mercifully released them. With a rising sense of panic, Christina thought of her family. What if Victor couldn't get a deferment? Now they had 2 children, little Layli born only last December. No relatives nearby, and friends simply wouldn't be able to help them. The shortage of everything, food, fuel, clothing, was frightening. What if... She tried not to think of what might happen. Early the next morning, she set out on her mission. During the time it took to reach her destination, she considered the situation. Illness seldom bothered Victor. In fact, she could hardly remember a time except now when he hadn't enjoyed good health. Maybe God was preventing a greater calamity. At least now the hope of a deferment existed, however remote the possibility. Anyway, she would do her part. Already the line of people with the same purpose in mind stretched far outside of the office. The Russian officers looked stern and forbidding. Then Christina noticed they seemed friendlier to those who could speak a little Russian and did not need an interpreter. For a moment her flame of hope flared brighter. Then it flickered and died. While she had learned Russian in school, she had forgotten most of it. Try anyway, she thought, when her turn came for an interview. To her surprise, she could express herself well enough for them to understand her. The officer asked a few questions, then stated, "We cannot rule on your case here. Tomorrow you'll have to go to another office." Disappointed and yet somewhat relieved, Christina returned home. At least it wasn't hopelessly over yet. The fruitless trek from office to office continued for 4 days. Christina fought a feeling of desperation. She paid a visit to the doctor who had advised Victor to get some rest in order to recover from his hacking cough. "Can you give me a letter stating Victor's physical condition so that he would have a better chance of getting an exemption?" she requested. Dr. Lepp was reluctant. "I can't safely do that. We've been commanded not to release any statements." Seeing the disappointment on her face, he reconsidered. "I'll write the truth about his illness. My future appears quite safe. Medical men are of more value than other humans, it seems," he added cynically. Gratefully, Christina thanked him. But would the communist officials consider Victor's case serious enough to grant a deferment? "Don't be too encouraged," the doctor warned. "When they want to deport a man, they don't let illness stand in the way." That evening, Christina related her experiences. "Tomorrow I have an appointment to appear before a committee of military men and doctors. It may be our last chance." "Let's fast and pray," her husband urged. Christina entered the appointed place the next day. Someone tapped her on the shoulder. She turned, startled and surprised, to see Dr. Kiwi, a woman physician she had known for a number of years. Noticing Christina's distraught face, the doctor said, "We can't talk long, but tell me what troubles you, quickly." After Christina explained, Dr. Kiwi advised, "I suggest you appear before the committee last, if at all possible. Here, come sit beside me. Maybe you'll hear something that will help you know what to say when your turn comes." She motioned Christina to a chair and took her own place at the long table. Christina sat and listened intently for hours as the committee questioned the many persons seeking an exemption. No matter what the illness, the verdict remained the same. You must leave for Russia. There you will receive treatment for your ailment. A sense of futility crept over her. Some of the men had even come from the hospital following major surgery, yet the answer did not change. How can I possibly hope for an exemption when so many worse off than Victor can't even get a couple of weeks to recuperate, she wondered. The hours wore on, and the line of people shortened. Finally, Dr. Kiwi turned to her. "Please give me the letter and the medical report." Radiating a sense of self-assurance, the woman physician explained to the commissioner that Christina had come on behalf of her husband. He listened, asked only a few questions, and began to write. A few seconds later, he handed a piece of paper to the doctor. She read it quickly, then said softly as she handed it to Christina, "Your husband is saved." Christina stared at the document. Deferred for 1 month. She could hardly believe it. It was more than they had hoped for. On the way home, she stopped to see their family doctor. Happily, she reported the outcome. Dr. Lepp looked at her in astonishment and reached for the note. "Victor is safe now, because it's quite certain that before a month is over, the Russians will have left this country." Studying the deferment again, with a touch of awe in his voice, he commented, "I don't know whether you realize it, but you are the only person I know who has succeeded in getting a deferment for her husband because of illness." Then, without warning, German armies invaded Russia and the Baltic states. Tallinn fell on August 30, 1941. Victor and Christina received the news with amazement. Exactly on that day, Victor's military deferment from the Russians ran out.